The flood waters prevailed on the earth for almost a year, and Noah's Ark landed in the mountains of the east, in an area known today as Anatolia or Turkey. This land was very dry, and no plants grew there after the flood. Mankind moved west in search of permanent habitation, an ideal land of plush vegetation and fertile soil. Therefore, this small tribe of people moved west from the east, according to Genesis 11:2. This people had a small perception of what the earth looked like and had no land to call home. It was only a natural instinct to migrate. The continents at this time were connected and fit together like a puzzle. A 30-day travel through southern Europe they went until they reached the western border of modern-day Portugal. There they gazed upon the great Hiddekel River, which at one time was the only body of water separating Europe from America. They built canoes from driftwood deposits on the land and sailed across the Hiddekel. They dwelt in the eastern region of North America and built ancient cities such as Babel and Akkad. After the languages were confounded and the tribe grew larger, they split up and dwelt in different locations. Every grandson of Noah and their wives spoke their own dialect and went their own ways. The clans of Ham, such as Canaan, Mizraim, Phut, and Kush, began to speak different dialects. Therefore they took their wives and children and separated themselves. The tribes of Kush settled first in South America, on the basin of the Gihon River, which at one point was the only thing separating South America from Africa at the time. The basin of the Gihon River had streams which included the Amazon River and the Congo River, which at one point were both connected. They set up civilization on both sides of the Gihon River. This is how South American Indians brought civilization to Africa. These so-called Indians were the Kushites. There's a lot of archaeological evidence supporting African civilization actually beginning in South America that mainstream archaeologists choose to hide or deliberately ignore. An African author, Katanga Ebongo, wrote a book entitled Civilization and the Ancient Egyptians. In the book, he stated that South American Indians brought civilization to Africa. This does make sense because civilization in South America can be traced back 11,500 years, while early African civilization date back to 7,500 years. Kush was built on both sides of the Gihon River, and during the days of Peleg, when the continent split, the two parts of Kush went with it. A Kushite empire in America and a Kushite empire in Africa. Both kingdoms flourished and spread. Africa's Kush did not start in modern Ethiopia as previously believed. It actually began in the west and grew large, rich, and popular in the east along the White and Blue Nile. A key aspect of Kush was a material called Topaz, a highly valuable blue stone found mainly in South America and West Africa. In the book of Job, chapter 28 and 19, it clearly states that Ethiopia, aka Kush, was known for its highly valuable topaz. However, topaz can mainly be found in South America and West Africa, which were at one point connected. Topaz cannot be found in modern-day Ethiopia. Therefore, modern-day Ethiopia cannot be the original biblical Ethiopia or the original biblical Kush. I'll thoroughly explain myself. If we begin to do our research, we will then find out that Noah's Ark has been discovered, and it has been discovered in modern-day Turkey, Anatolia, the mountains of Ararat, the mountains of the east, just like Genesis tells us. In fact, in Genesis 10, it says that Noah's Ark landed in the mountains of the east. Now, one point I should show you is if Noah's Ark landed in the mountains of the east, in Mount Ararat of Turkey, which is west of modern-day Israel, and Israel is supposed to be right here, then how could this be the mountain of the east if this is actually west? This should tell us that the land of Canaan would actually be somewhere around here, because if it's somewhere around here, this would be east in comparison to wherever Canaan is. Now let's just get back into the point. When we read Genesis 11:2, we would then see that mankind migrated after the flood, and they migrated west. They went from here and they went this way. Reason being is because after the flood, I can imagine this entire land being dry, because if water's on the earth for such a long period of time, plants will not grow as immediate. Plants will just die. And this is the reason of this great desert in this region. Now, they were looking for lush land. They were looking for a place where you can plant in soil and eat continuously. So these people were hungry for a period of time, apparently. And they took a 30-day walk through Europe looking for food, hunting, and gathering, okay, until they got to the Hiddekel River. Now, let me tell you something about these rivers. These are the primordial rivers. Modern day biblical scholars will tell you that all the primordial rivers mentioned in Genesis 2, the Hiddekel River, the Gihon River, the Pison River, the Euphrates River, all these rivers are in the Middle East. How? When these were the four major rivers of the earth, are you just going to tell me that the four major rivers of the earth were all in the Middle East? This makes no sense. Okay? This makes no sense. And the reason why all these rivers are spread throughout the earth is because these rivers are meant to water the earth and to water Eden. Now, Eden is in the North Pole, and I'll explain it in another video. But Eden is indeed in the North Pole. If Eden was not in the North Pole, if Eden was somewhere around Canaan where you could just walk to Eden, then people in the scripture would just go to Eden. You never read anybody in the scripture walking to Eden or coming back from Eden or living in Eden. And in fact, the Most High placed cherubim in Eden to protect the tree of life, and they had flaming swords in their hand. You can't just go to Eden. If Eden is in the Middle East just sitting there, you would be able to see the tree of life, wouldn't you? You would be able to see the cherubim. Nobody has seen them because the Garden of Eden is not where you think it is. It's not in Africa. It's not in America. It's in the North Pole. Okay. Now, simply put, these rivers, the Hiddekel River, the Gihon River, the Pison River, this is the true locations of these rivers, and I can determine that. Hiddekel River is supposed to flow toward the east of Assyria, according to Genesis 2. Now, in my migration series, part 2, I thoroughly explained how Assyria, the actual location of Assyria, is the southeastern region of North America. It's not in the Middle East where you think it is. The actual location of Assyria is in the southeastern region of North America. That's why I said you have to watch part 2 and part 3 of the migration series before you watch this video. And I explained it and proved it. Now, the Gihon River. In Hebrew, Gihon means to burst forth, okay? Now, when Africa and South America separated, the Gihon River eventually formed the South Atlantic Ocean, which is the most powerful body of water on the planet. Most of the slaves who died in the transatlantic slave trade died because of the choppy waters. Ships were drowned. This is the reason, because the water burst forth in this region. Now, you can look on both sides of the Gihon and see names with similar etymology. Like you can find Guyana north of Brazil. You can find Guinea in Africa. You can find Ghana in Africa, because it's all connected to the Gihon. Now, another thing about the Gihon is every river has a basin, and every basin has streams, and every river system has other rivers attached. Now, in South America, you would have the Amazon, and it's directly connected to the Congo River, and they flow perfectly. Now, according to mainstream science, you will actually find out that the Amazon River at one point did flow from east to west instead of west to east like it does today. When you look at the Pison River, In Genesis 2, it tells us that the Python compassed the entire land of Havilah, which is the land of gold. Now, the highest concentration of gold on earth can be found in the western coast of the Americas, from Alaska all the way down to Peru, in Mexico and California as well. All of that is a high concentration of gold. Okay, so that makes sense as well. Python in Hebrew is talking about a large body of water. And once Lumaria separated from the Americas and sank, the Pacific became the world's largest body of water. So once they crossed the Hiddekel, they set up civilization around here, Akkad and Babel. Now you see Akkad today, Accadia. Ancient Algonquian Indians have confirmed that this land has always been called Accadia. And Babel, you can see that the stone structures in this land predate any North American tribe. So scientists are still wondering who built those cities. And I personally believe that this is actually the cities of Babylon. When the languages were confounded, every nation split up and went their own ways. And Kush, for example, went south into Mexico and into South America and built empire on both sides of the Gihon. And when they split, Kush Empire was on this side of the river and Kush Empire was on this side of the river. You have Kush in South America and Kush in Africa. You have two Kushite empires at the same time. Job chapter 28 tells us that the land of Kush is known for its beautiful topaz stones, which are mainly found in Brazil and Nigeria, not modern Ethiopia, not modern Kush, but in this region. And this region has to be the actual Kush.
For the scattered tribes of the melanated Aboriginal indigenous peoples. Okay, we used to be one land mass. It was called Pangaea, and over thousands of years it has separated.
Because you can see how America and Africa fit together like a puzzle. I even went so far as one day to cut out this edge on the map and cut out this edge of the map and bring the two together, and they fit together perfectly, except for there's a space right in the middle where Atlantis would have been at. And their scientists will tell you that, oh, them continents, they separated millions and millions and millions of years ago. There was no humans around at that time. We're talking about these things taking place as recently, the last of these things taking place as recently as 1500.
Here we go, Job chapter 28 verse 19. The pit dove, Kush, cannot appropriate it. We're talking about wisdom. Now, Pitda is the Hebrew word for topaz, and Kush is the Hebrew word for Ethiopia. Let's go. What is Canaan topaz? Hailing from Nigeria, West Africa, right? And then it says right here, the most historically significant gemstone deposits on Earth be in east of Brazil. Understand that East Brazil and West Africa were once connected. When we look up where topaz is found, we see a high concentration in Brazil, a high concentration in Nigeria. Understand that these both are connected. Now, the modern day Ethiopia, modern day Kush, does not have this topaz. So what is Job chapter 28 verse 19 really talking about? Now, when we read the book Civilization and the Ancient Egyptians by an African himself, Katanga Ebango, we will then see what he said. I'm going to read what I got underlined. It says, in fact, evidence from archaeology, oral history, traditional languages, and cultural practices strongly indicate that it was the South American Indians who introduced civilization to Africa some 7,000 years ago. The South American Indians had introduced civilization to Africa, making Africa the second continent in the world to become civilized. There is an abundance of cultural and technological evidence in South America and Africa that strongly suggests that there was a long interaction between the Africans and South American Indians. However, Western anthropologists and historians have traditionally not been interested in this evidence. See this? See this? South American Indians. These South American Indians were not just any South American Indians. These were the Kushites. The Kushites of Africa originate in South America. And I can prove this because they still speak the same language. So basically in Brazil and Guyana, not all the Aboriginal black people of the land speak Spanish and Portuguese like most of the people of the land. The blacks who speak Spanish and Portuguese are the ones who were actually enslaved on the land, okay? And were Israelites suffering from the curses of Deuteronomy 28. Now the ones who still speak Ghana language in South America, they're speaking Ghana language because they have been on that soil forever speaking Ghana language. They introduced Ghana language to Ghana. They are the Kushites.
We have a lot of maroon villages along, for example, the Suriname River. We I don't know, let's adopt five. Yeah, it is a maroon, a small maroon village where you can meet the real Corvanti people of the river. The Corvanti maroon.
Yeah, Oscar boy.
Okay.
I go. We here. Tumo bama. Kama daddy. Si Congo. Mama. Beshani. Onyolele. Putu nani ota. Agan. C'est gan. Gan. Bata. Tobete. Sokonidi. Sakadado. Ah, yes, I've come back.
Satoto.
I am Kosa.
Bidi am Mumbai.
From Mumbai.
Tatarele Twanu.
Katero Sekama.
Sakalado Didida.
Not only do many South American Indians speak Ghanaian language, but guess what? According to Christopher Columbus's observation, when he came to America, he reported Africans coming to America as well, having interactions with each other. And these interactions most likely have been happening forever. I be telling people, South America and Africa is one landmass. Ethiopia, Kush, only to be separated by the South Atlantic Ocean. And not only that, let us not forget about Abu Bakr II. Abu Bakr II was a Malian king of the Mali Empire. They went to the Americas 200 years before Columbus, and that has not even been the first time Africans went to the Americas. They have been doing that. And not only did Abu Bakr II go to the Americas, but he went to present day Brazil, most likely to meet their cousins who are just sitting on the other side of the waters. Now, using our Latin 16th century Gerardus Mercator map, we will then begin to look into the original names of these territories. Let's first look at Oceanus Atlanticus. This does not mean Atlantic Ocean. This means the Ocean of Atlantis. We know this because Atlantis was at one point right here. Atlantis was a huge island with empires that stretched all the way through West Africa and all the way through the northern part of South America. Pyramids all in the Atlantic Ocean. But anyway, let's talk about this. Oceanus Ethiopicus. What do you think that means? Oceanus Ethiopicus. That means the Ocean of Ethiopia. Ocean of Ethiopia. Now, if Ethiopia is freaking right here, because this is what everybody thinks, Ethiopia is right here, why the heck would this be called the Ocean of Ethiopia? Now you have to think, shouldn't this be called the Ocean of Ethiopia or the Sea of Ethiopia or something, because this is closer to Ethiopia than this is. I mean, Persia was supposed to be right here. They named this the Persian Gulf, or the Sea of Persia, right? But here's the thing. Way before the 1500s, way before imperialism and colonialism, way before white people started to divide and conquer Aboriginal territories, Africa was only divided in 3 to 4 main parts. The northern region of Africa was called Libya, and you can still see it here. Libya, all of this is Libya. You see Nubia right here, you see that's Nubia. And all of this in the central region was called Ethiopia. Let's refresh. This was called Libya. This was called Nubia. This was Ethiopia. Southern region, tribes of Canaan lived here. Tribes of Canaan lived all around. Nubia was ran by Kushites, and Kush was ran by Kushites. All of this, like I said before, was called Ethiopia. That's why this is called the Ocean of Ethiopia. Nubia is the one that built those pyramids. Nubia and Foot. Two people were selling paintings. One guy started selling paintings in the year 2000. The other guy started selling paintings in the year 2014. Now come 2019, the dude who been selling paintings since 2000 had way more paintings sold than the guy who been selling paintings since 2014. Why did the dude who been selling paintings since 2000 have so many paintings sold in comparison to the dude who been selling since 2014? Simply because the dude who been selling since 2000 has been doing it longer. He's painting more. It's been a longer time. That's the same correlation that we can find in the Americas when it comes to pyramids built in the Americas and pyramids built in Africa. Pyramids are a key highlight of early civilization, and you can find more pyramids in the Americas than any continent on the planet, especially Africa. Africa only has no more than 400 pyramids, and Americas, they have far more than 1,000 pyramids. If you Google how many pyramids in the Americas, it'll tell you 1,000, but it's way more than 1,000. In fact, new studies show that there are more than 60,000 pyramids in the Americas. Why are there so many more pyramids in the Americas than the pyramids in Africa? Simply because the American civilization have been at it for a longer period of. Foot is Libya. All of this is Libya. When you look at the statues of the ancient Egyptians that live around here, they still carry the same phenotype that you can see all throughout Sudan, which at one point was the kingdom of Kush. Egypt was an intersection between Foot and Kush. You had a lower Egypt and you had an upper Egypt. Now, people want to say the Egyptians were Mizraim. Depends on what you're talking about. We get this from the King James Version Bible, which is written in English. The word Egypt is not even in the Hebrew text. You won't find the word Egypt in the Hebrew Tanakh or Torah. You will find the word Mizraim. Mizraim is in America, in the basin of the Mississippi River, which is the Mississippi today. A widely held misconception is that the people who lived in this region are descendants of Mizraim. In this area today, which people call Egypt, which is a Greek name and cannot be found anywhere in the Hebrew text, everybody says this is the land of Mizraim. However, that's a lie. Okay? The ancient Egyptians who lived in this region never called themselves the Egyptians. In fact, they called themselves the Putites. Okay, do your research. Look up the Putites. Look up Puntitites. The Putites. This is a word corruption of the Footites, one of the sons of Ham. Remember, Ham had 4 sons: Phut, Kush, Canaan, and Mizraim. Mizraim is not the father of who we call the Egyptians. It is Phut. Okay. Now, a lot of the ancient tribes of Aboriginal people around the world still hold names that are just word corruptions of their original names of their forefathers. Just like when we look at the San tribe of South Africa. When we look at the San tribe, what does the word San sound like? Okay, San. When we go into the Hebrew and we look into the Hebrew text and we look at one of the sons of Canaan, Sin, right? One of the sons of Canaan, Sin. You take the I and replace it with the A because you know Hebrew vowels are interchangeable. You would see that the Sin turns into a San. Instead of the Sinites, we have the Sanites, or the San tribe in Africa. Now you look at the San tribe, and what is one remarkable phenotype that the San tribe holds? They look almost Asiatic, right? They look like Asians, or should I say the Asians look like the San. Now look at the Mongolians feature. What is the most prominent Mongolian country, or the most prominent Mongolian landmass you can think of? Most people think of China, right? Let's look at Canaan right quick. Let's look at one of the sons of Canaan, Sinai, Shina, Shina, China. Like, let's look at the original man of China. On the far left, we see the original man of China, the black African looking man of China. On the far right, we see a white girl, right? And then in the middle, you see what you get when you mix the two, okay? This is what you get when you mix the two. You have the Caucasian and you have the original. Now think of China. When you look at the son of Canaan, who was named Sin, the father of the Sinites, and you spell it in Hebrew, how do you spell it? You will spell it Sin, Ayin, Nun, right? But look at this. The Sin is the word that the word sin starts with. And it could be interchangeable with the Shin. The Shin would be SH. And the SH could eventually be corrupted into the CH or the Het, right? And guess what? If that is corrupted into the CH, the Het, what does that word become? It turns from Sinite to Shinite to Chinite. China. Get it? China. 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 China is a word corruption of Shina, which is a word corruption of Sinna, which is one of the sons of Canaan. You understand what I'm saying? That's why when you look at the San tribe in South Africa and then you look at the Chinese, they look dang near alike. They have the same phenotype. The Mongoloid peoples are descendants of Canaan. Okay? And you have the offspring of Canaan all throughout the world. You can read in Genesis where it says Canaan spread themselves abroad. But yeah, back to my original point. The Egyptians did not call themselves Egyptians, but they called themselves the Puntites. Do your research on that.